Hi, it's Future from Sewmate. Welcome to my channel. If you want to see how I make these beautiful women's or ladies pants or trousers, please stay tuned. You will need your basic pant block patterns to do this, both back and front. I've got a tutorial on this channel on how you can make one for yourself, so I'll put a link in the description below and the link above. Go make yourself one and then come and do this with me. We'll start with drafting the back pattern, so first trace around the pattern as usual. Making sure to mark the dots. Lift your pattern. Draw in your knee line, hemline, hip line, and your dot. Measure and mark down for our waistband depth from the waistline, which is 5 centimeters, following the waistline curve. Mark in your owl punch 1 centimeter up from the dart tip and put a mark. Next, draw in your grain line. Square it down from the dart tip. Now labeling the pattern. This is my back pant pattern. Cut one pair and I put my initial. Marking the notches. Now cut around the pattern. Moving on to making our front pattern. Trace around the pattern as usual, marking the dots and the notches. Lift the pattern. Draw in your dot. Draw in your hip line, knee line, and the hemline. Measure and mark down for your waistband depth, which is 5 centimeters from the waistline like we did with the back pant. Just follow it through. Measure the dot amount left 1 centimeter below the line we just marked. Put the same amount at the side seam there and just trim it off our pattern. We don't need the dot anymore for our pant pattern. Next, we're making our pocket, so go 7.5 centimeters, put a mark, and go 13 centimeters on the side and put a mark. Join these 2 points with a straight line, then go down the side seam about 10 centimeters down from the last point, put a mark, and draw a straight line. Go 5 centimeters away from the top mark and draw another straight line down. Get your curved ruler and make a nice curve there. Now I'm putting seam allowances right around the pocket. Get another fresh piece of pattern paper, fold it in half, put it under your pocket, and get your tracing wheel and trace around the pocket like I'm doing here. Now cut around the pattern following the tracing wheel marks. Next, I'm putting in my grain line and labeling the pattern, pocket facing, cut one pair, and I put my initial. Grain line again and labeling the pattern, pocket bag, cut one pair and put my initial. Now moving on to making the zipper fly, draw a straight line parallel to the crotch line and then join it to the hip line with a nice curve. Put a notch 2 centimeters above the bottom line. Get a fresh pattern paper and just trace around that pattern piece, which is the zipper fly. Now cut around the pattern following the tracing wheel marks. On to making our zipper fly shoot, get another pattern paper and fold it in half. Now take the fly piece that we just made and tape it down like I'm doing here, putting one straight edge next to the fold line. Cut around it like I'm doing here. Now putting in my grain line for the zipper shield and labeling it fly shield, cut 1 and putting my initial. Putting the grain line for the fly, zipper fly, and labeling it zipper fly, cut 1 and putting my initial. Cut around the pattern like I'm doing here. Cancel that dot out because we don't need it anymore. Now reshape that waistline. Now I'm marking my notches. Now I'm drawing in my grain line. And labeling the pattern, front pin pattern, cut 1 pair and I put my initial. Now moving on to making the waistband, starting with the front pin, trace along the side seam to the first leg of the dart, pivot the dart out and continue tracing up to the side of the crotch line. Lift your pattern, just labeling that is the front and the side seam there. With your curved ruler, reshape nicely the waistline there. Now measure and mark down for 7 centimeters, which is waistband depth 5 centimeters plus 1 centimeter seam allowance for the waist and 1 centimeter seam allowance at the bottom. Now I'm adding a fly extension of 4 centimeters to the center front and connecting those lines. Then I'm adding a 1 centimeter seam allowance and connecting the lines again. Now adding the notches. Just putting a note that I put 4 centimeters extension for the fly. On to the back waistband, trace along the side seam like we did with the front up to the first leg of the dart. Pivot the dart out and continue tracing the rest of the waistline. Continue tracing the rest of the waistline to the back crotch. Lift your pattern, that's the side seam. Get your curved ruler and just correct the shape there, the waistline. Now measure and mark 7 centimeters down from the waistline for the waistband depth, like we did with the front. So that's our back piece. Cut along the pieces, both front and back. Cut off 1.5 centimeters from the side seams because we're going to join these 2 waistband pieces to form just one waistband. our block has seam allowances added. That's why we're taking the seam allowances off for the side seams only. Now join the side seams, aligning them both on the line that we just drawn for the side seams using your tape like I'm doing here. Get another pattern piece and put it under so that we can shape nicely there, so that we don't end up with points on the joining that we just made. Smoothen it nicely with the curved ruler. We're going to put our back on fold. Remember to take the seam allowance out as well. Now putting on my notches and putting in my grain line. That's the center front. So that's our waistband. Cut 2 pieces on fold and cut 1 fusing piece on fold as well. And I put my initial. Now just notching around my parents. Our pen patterns are finished, so now we're moving on to sewing. What you need are your patterns. I've got a nice Ankara fabric here that I'm gonna be using, and I've got this trousers zipper, the black one. I also got my normal cutting tools. So now let's move on to cutting. Now we have all our pattern pieces cut and ready to sew. So the first step is for us to interface the waistband piece. We've got 2 waistband pieces, but we're just interfacing one of them. So that's what I'm gonna do now. Okay, now that's done. I've interfaced my waistband and I've got another piece that's not interfaced. I'm gonna put this on the side while I work on my back pant, okay? So next, get your back pant pieces and sew on the darts. So I'm just gonna align these notches here I put here with my owl punch here, and I'll just go and sew on the dart and do the same on the other side. Let's do that. Back darts are sewn, all sewn, and I went ahead and ironed them out. Now we're moving on to attaching our pockets to our front pants patterns. Now with your front pants right sides up, get your 2 pocket facing pieces and just align it onto your pant pockets like this. Pin them along. So now we're gonna go to our sewing machine and just sew along the pockets here, okay? Once we finish, turn your pocket over to the side like this and just do a bit of understitching around here, okay? Let's do that. Okay, that's done. So we've sewn in our pocket pieces. Because this is a straight seam, we're not going to be clipping it or anything because it just lays on nicely as it is. So I went ahead and sewn on the pockets, did a bit of understitching there to help the pocket lay inside quite nicely, and I've also just given it a press, okay? Now with your front pants wrong sides up, get your pocket bag pieces and just align them on the pocket like this. Pin them along. Now go to your sewing machine and sew along the edges of the pockets, just on the pockets like this, the facing and the pocket back. Just sew along the edges to the end here. Do the same here, sew along the edges to the end. When we finish, we're going to attach our pockets at the top and at the side here, so that our pocket doesn't move and lays nicely. Do the same here, sew along the edges and sew along the top here with a 0.5 centimeter seam allowance. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so both pockets are done, all sewn and overlocked and attached at the top and the side. Okay, so next take your zipper fly and zipper shield. For the zipper shield, you're just gonna go to the overlocker and overlock this edge here up to here, and then we take the zipper fly, we're gonna go ahead and overlock this whole curvy edge. Okay, let's do that. Okay, that's done. So next, now you got to take your fly piece, this one piece, and just align it to your left pant with the right side up along the crotch here. Pin it on. Now go to your sewing machine and sew along this edge here with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. When you finish that, overlock both pieces along the crotch line here. Okay, after that, turn this piece over and give it an understitch here so that it will be able to roll over nicely into the pant. Let's do that. Okay, that's done. We've overlocked both edges, and I've sewn this one on and overlocked it, and I've also done an understitching here. Okay, now we're gonna get both our front pieces, lay them one on top of the other like I'm doing here, right sides together, and we're going to go to the sewing machine and sew from the zipper notch here going down. Leave about 1.5 to 2 centimeters here. Okay. Okay, next get your zipper shield and just go and sew on the zipper. I've got a very long zipper here, as you can see. I'm gonna shorten it. So what we are gonna do is to take your zipper and just put it next to the overlocked edge here like this. Now you go to your sewing machine and just sew along here to attach the two together. When we finish with that, get your front pants again and just go and iron the right side under by 1.3 centimeters. Remember, I've got a zipper allowance of 1.5 centimeters, so iron it at 1.3 centimeters. And when that is done, we are going to go and sew along the edge here like this. So I'm just gonna go and do all these stages at the same time. Now we're gonna take the left side of our pants and just make sure we cover our zipper with it like this, making sure that we don't have any tucks or anything along the zipper here. Make sure that you've got a nice straight line. Just align it nicely like I'm doing here, and get your pins and just pin it along. Now turn your pant over like this and just grab the fly and the zipper. Pin the zipper shield here out of the way. So now we're just gonna go back to the sewing machine and sew along the zipper fly and the zipper here. Okay, just attach them together. Okay, so finished with sewing our zipper. It's nice and neat. Okay, with your pant facing up, get your back pant pieces and lay them on top like this with right sides together, and just pin along the side seams. Pin along the inseams as well, just align them like this and just pin them along all the way down. Now take this to your sewing machine and sew along the outer edges and the inseams and overlock them. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so that's done. I've finished with sewing the side seams and inseams, and I've overlocked them like you can see now. So the next thing we're gonna do is to take one leg of the pant and turn it to the right side. Okay, after that, grab that same leg that you just turned and put it into the other leg. Now make your crotch lines like I've just done here and just pin along the edge like this. So next, go to your sewing machine and just sew along the seam here with a 1 centimeter seam allowance and overlock the seam as well. Let's do that. Okay, so I finished sewing the crotch line and overlocking it. Okay, our next step is to attach the waistband. Take your 2 waistband pieces, the interfaced one and the uninterfaced one, and put them right sides together and just pin along the edge. Now go to your sewing machine and just sew along the edge here with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. When you finish, clip along the edges so that this will be able to roll over nicely. When you finish with that, take the uninterfaced side and just roll it over on top of the interfaced side and give it an understitching so that this can roll over nicely into the pants. And then we're gonna take this bottom part of the uninterfaced side and just go and overlock it right round. Okay, let's do that. Okay, now I've done all those stages to my waistband. That's sewing at the top, under stitching and overlocking at the edge, and I've also clipped the seam in between there, and I went ahead and ironed it nicely so that it's easier for me to assemble onto my pants. So now get your pants, turn them to the right side. Now get your waistband, take the interfaced side and just align the notch here, align it with the edge here like I'm doing now, in along the whole area. Now go to your sewing machine and sew all around the waistline here. Okay, let's do that. So I went ahead and attached the waistband piece to the pants, and I've also ironed this seam up and ironed the waistband in nicely like I've done here. This makes it easy for you to assemble it. So next we're going to take the edge of the waistband, turn it over along the seam like this, and then we go to the sewing machine and sew from this corner with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. We get to the corner and we turn over again along this way until we get to the center front. Okay, do the same on this side, turn it over, sew with a 1 centimeter seam allowance and turn it over again. Okay, so after that we're going to stitch in the ditch here, making sure to catch everything up that's under there, okay, and covering everything like this. The next thing we're gonna do is to hem our pants. So first thing you're gonna do is to overlock right around the edges here. After that, I'm gonna finish them off with a blind hem stitch, so I'm gonna do that now. Okay, so I finished with the waistband and I finished the hem as well, and I went ahead and ironed it all down. So my pants are finished. Pleased with the result. Thank you.